Wednesday, February 17th, 2021. Tonight's class, we're going to be discussing Seudat Purim. Now, one would normally think, what's the big deal to discuss Seudat Purim? Okay, we have a Purim meal. Thing is, this year we have a bit of an anomaly where Purim falls out on Friday. So Seudat Purim has to be on Friday. We know generally we don't have any sort of set meals on Friday to keep our appetite in honor of Shabbat and start the Shabbat meal properly. So what is the story with Seudat Purim on a Friday? And there are many people out there teaching different types of classes on the subject, each one with their view, each one with their sources. And I'd like to give you my view, based upon, of course, sources. The last time we had this situation was 13 years ago, 2008. So obviously it's not something that happens too often. And I do hope to look at source material going back in time to both the Gemara, to Rishonim, to Aharonim, and we'll see how it was looked at. But first and foremost, we're going to look at Shulchan Aruch. So you have in your source sheets, pages 3 and 4, Shulchan Aruch, Siman Tafresh Saddihe. Okay, 695. Dineh Seudat Purim. And it's only 4 Sa'ifim, so we're going to read through them rather quickly, and I'll explain the pertinent sections. So we start. And it's very interesting because usually we start with Shulchan Aruch himself, with the Maran Rabbi Yosef Karo. Over here it opens up with a Haggaha from Muram. Haggaha, Mizvah leharbot b'Seudat Purim. Okay, it tells you it's a mitzvah to make many Seudot, it would seem. Okay, or to make your Seudah very, very great. U'b'Seudah ahat yos'im. So obviously he means to make many Seudot, but you fulfill your obligation with one. Adif. Seudat Purim sha'asa b'layla lo yasa yedei hoba. So the Seudah is not fulfilled if it is done at night. It has to be done during the day. حقها ويكون معكم جنب الليلة يسمح في يربيع قصد بسعودة. But even though it's not mitzvah, it's still nice to enjoy yourself at night. بيت حياب إنيش لبسومي ببوريا عدل يداع بين أرور همان لبروخ مردخاي. What exactly this means, we've had classes on it in the past, and it's still something that needs to be studied if you understand the Aramaic properly, but it does not mean to get drunk, so we're going to make that clear. A person is not obligated to get drunk on Purim, and a person, it's haram for them to get drunk on Purim or any time of the year. So we're not going to translate it as most people do, that a person must get drunk on Purim until you do not know how to distinguish between cursed be Haman and blessed be Mordechai. حقها ويش أمريم دين صديق ليشتكر. So حقها, these Muram is telling you, there are those who say that you do not have to get drunk. كل كخ, not that much, not too drunk. إلا يشتي يوتر من الموضوع. Rather drink more than usual. ويشان, and you sleep. ومتوخ شيشان إنه يوديع بين أرور همان وبروخ مردخاي. And you get tipsy enough that you get a little drowsy, you fall asleep. And when you're sleeping, obviously you cannot distinguish between Arur Haman and Baruch Mordechai. ואחד המרבה ואחד הממעיט ולבד שיכוון ליבו לשמיים ואין יטענו בפורים מלבד תענית חלו. Okay, doesn't have to do with what we have to do, so we're going to skip that. אבל סימן דקסה וסימן דקה. יש נהגו ללבוש בליל שבת ויום טוב בפורים וכן נכון, ולעשות את נעודה בפורים לאחר מנחה וערבי, אוקיי, מנחה. Now watch. ונוהגים לעשות סעודת פורים לאחר מנחה. The custom is to do סעודת פורים, to have the festive meal of Purim after מנחה. וערבית תפללו בלילה. Okay, and then ערבית you pray at night. Obviously, ערבית is for night time. ומפללים מנחה תחילה And first you pray Minha, بعود hayom gadol, while the day still has a lot of time within the day. Okay, ורוב הסעודה צריכה להיות ביום, and the bulk of the Seuda has to be in the daytime. ולא כמו שנוהגים להתחיל סמוך לערב, and not like those who have the custom to begin the meal close to the evening. ועיקר הסעודה היא ליל ט"ו, and then they end up making the bulk of the Seuda the night of the 15th of Adar instead of the day of the 14th of Adar. וכשחל פורים ביום שישי, and when Purim falls out on Friday, יעשו הסעודה בשחרית משום כבוד שבת. So when Shabbat, or rather when Purim falls out on Erev Shabbat, make the Seuda in the morning, shahrit, in order that you can continue to honor the Shabbat properly with Seuda Shabbat at night. ומי שרוצה לעשותה תמיד בשחרית, hareshud beyado. And anybody who always wants to make Seudat Purim in the morning, he has that option and he's allowed to do so. Then he continues. יש אומרים שיש לאכול מאכל זרעונים פורים זכר לזרעונים שאכל בני אל וחבריו בבבל. טוב לעסוק מעט בתורה קודם שיתחיל הסעודה ושמח לדבר ליהודים הייתה אורה ושמחה. מדרשינן אורה זו תורה. וחייב משתה ושמחה קיסר בית הימין י"ד וט"ו. וכן נהגו ויש אומרים דעים הזיק אחד לחברו מכוח שמחת פורים פטור מלשלם. מעיין בחושן משפט בדיני זיקין. All this has nothing to do with what we're reading. Then, גימל, אומר על הניסים בברכת המזון, בברכת הארץ, ואם התחיל סעודתו ביום, ומה שכה עד הלילה, אומר על הניסים, דברת תחילת סעודה אזלינן. Okay, this is very important. You say על הניסים in the ברכת המזון after the סעודת Purim, and there is an opinion, okay, I'm sorry, and if you begin rather the Seuda during the daytime, and the Seuda ends up dragging out until the night, you still say Al Hanisim in the Birkat Hamazon, even though now Purim is technically over, because we follow the beginning of the meal. Keep that in mind. And there's an opinion, and there's an opinion that you do not say it. And then Haggaha tells you, but the custom is to follow the first opinion, which is that we do say Al Hanisim, even if the Seuda ends at night after Purim is over. Okay, and then Dalit finally, Hayab l'shloach la'habero shete manot basar o shel mineh o chadim shene'emar l'shloach manot ish l're'ehu shete matanot ish ahad v'chol hanbeh l'shloach l're'im mishubbah v'im lo mahliv l'habero l'sholech, etc. We know all about l'shloach manot. Okay, and if you don't have, you can just switch Seudot with your friend to fulfill the Mishloach Manot. All right, and we're not going to go further than that in the Haggaha because it's totally unrelated to our topic at hand. So what did we get from the Siman and Shulchan Aruch? Shulchan Aruch is telling us, okay, and let's look at just Mara Rabbi Yosef Karo. What is he telling us? He's telling us you have to have a Seuda during the day. You have to drink a little bit and enjoy yourself. Okay, and what else does he tell us after that? In Siman Gimel, he tells you that we say Al Nisim in the Birkat Hamazon, even if the Birkat Hamazon is in the nighttime. Everything else we read, all the additions, were from Muram Rabbi Moshe Israelish. They basically come to complement what we read. The key point over here is that Rabbi Moshe Israelish, the Ramah, Muram, said that on a Friday Purim, make the Seuda in the morning. Maran said nothing about a Friday Purim. He did not give us any instruction. And therefore, we are left with confusion. Not only does he not tell us anything, and that Muram tells us to do it in the morning, Muram goes one step further to say that if you always want to make the Seuda in the morning, you do it in the morning. And Muram goes one step after that And he tells us that anybody, you know, making Seudat Purim should always do it where the bulk of the Seudah is during the day and not carrying over into the night. If it happens to carry over, happens to carry over. The bulk has to be during the day. Due to that, most people automatically think that that's what you're supposed to do. Only have Seudat Purim on a Friday in the morning. And according to the Mekubbalim, Seudat Purim always has to be in the morning. And that's what the Mekubbalim do. And people that follow the customs of the Mekubbalim, or people that think that they are Mekubbalim, and many people in Yerushalayim, every year, no matter what day of the week Purim is, their Seudah is in the morning. They finish reading the Megillah, and they go home, and 10 o'clock, 10:30, they sit down for Seudah, then they take a nap, and then they wake up, and then they start giving out Mishloach Manot in the afternoon. Very interesting concept. Now let's talk about us. Let's leave Shulchan Aruch alone. Let's leave Muram alone. What is our custom? What do we generally do? And those of us that know what we do, we know that we never have Seudat Purim in the morning. We don't have such a habit. The Seudah is generally a major meal, okay, with wine, with maza, with meat, with roast, with mahshi, with, whatever, with rice, with vegetables. We're talking about a major Seudah. It's not something people eat in the morning. Also, the importance of the day is not to sit down and stuff your face. The importance of the day, if you study Megillat Esther is really a lesson to us in how to deal with people, in how to appreciate people, in how to realize that Kol Yisrael Arabim Ze Bazeh, and that all the dictates of Pirkei Avot come to play in the Megillah. And we have to bring those practices, this musar, if you will, into our daily lives. And all the more so on Yom Purim. And that's therefore, look at the main issues with Purim. We have Mikra Megillah, and they tell you, don't have small minyanim, do it Birob Am Hadrat Melech. Have everybody together. Be mi'ahed the Am, unite the people. Okay? If you're united, that means you're together. That means you care about one another. You're sitting together, you're walking in together, you're walking out together, you're smiling at each other. It's a good feeling of ahdut. You have the Mishloach Manot. Mishloach Manot, what? Ish lire'ehu. Each person, okay, you're sending gifts of food to your fellow man, okay? Lire'ehu, okay? People that you love, people that you care about, people that are your neighbors, people that you may have slighted during the course of the year, and this is the perfect time, let me send them something, let me make amends. You have Matanot Ibyonim, the Ibyonim, the poor people, the people that you may turn your back on throughout the year. They tell you on Purim, even you give Sadaqah at regular basis, on Purim, anybody who puts out their hand, give them something. Don't ask questions. Don't look at them the wrong way. Give everybody. And it doesn't make a difference if they're Jewish, if they're Christian, if they're Muslim. Give. Keep happiness. Keep humankind unified. Bring Kiddush Hashem to the world. So these are all the messages of Purim. And then the Seudah is also to enjoy. But that's the last thing. That's, if anything, that's out of the realm of everything else. Okay? So, in a sense, and not to say it has the least importance, but it doesn't really, if you're saying which one of these things doesn't fit together, the Seudah doesn't fit together with the other items, in the same way. So now, therefore, the way I'm looking at it is that all these other items now take upon themselves a little more importance. They are the mizvot of the day. And the Seuda is now at the end of the day. When you've done everything, now I could sit down. I know it's been a beautiful holiday. We fulfilled all the mizvot related to the holiday properly, and we could sit down and we could enjoy ourselves, and we could remember the Sa'udot of the Megillah, etc., etc. Okay. Keeping all that in mind, let's look at, in fact, should we look at this first? Just want to tell you 1 second if we're going to look at this or not. On page 4 of your sheets. Yes, look at page 4 of your sheets. You have this section over here called Ba'ir Hitib. Okay? Ba'ir Hitib, basically under the Dalet of Shulchan Aruch, couple of lines later, you have the section called Ba'ir Hitib. Okay? And in the Ba'ir Hitib section, we're going to read from the second line where that small he appears. And we have over there, Ayin he nun, Rashi Tebot Fa'al HaNisim. Okay, and he goes on. V'im shachach al HaNisim Birkat HaMazon Mahzinin Oto Delo Sageh Delo Achil Sheila Rashad B'Mate Moshe. Fine. וכתבו התז מגן אברהם דהיינו דווקא בסעודה הראשונה שאוכל בפורים דה עיקר הטעם יש חיוב בסעודה באותו יום דכתיב ימי משתה ושמחה ואם כן סעודה ראשונה שאוכל בו ביום בו קיים סעודת פורים בזה ואין לא לתלות הדין במה שאנו קוראים לסעודה שאחר המנחה סעודת פורים ואם כן אם כבר אכל סעודה אחת ביום שוב אין מחזירים אותו עיין שם. Okay, so he brings a fascinating idea that every Seuda of the day, once it's daytime and you eat a Seuda, that is automatically considered your Seuda of Purim. Even if you plan on having a Seuda later in the day with all your friends, but if you ate a Seuda earlier, that was now considered your Seuda. And once you said Al HaNisim there, if you eat another Seuda later on and you forgot Al HaNisim, you don't have to go back and say it because you already fulfilled your obligation of Sa'udah of the day and of saying Al HaNisim. Interesting idea, but again, how many Sa'udot do we eat on Yom Purim? We generally don't eat various Sa'udot. Where are we over here? ועם זה כתב שם מהר"ן לפרש שפסק דלק שלב משב אלא כשמגיע לרחמן יאמר הרחמן יעשה לנו ניסים. Okay, so okay. After that, ראשונה. Okay, the Vav. In Kopechet, Miko Mashkatav Murdechi. Okay, Masati Katub. Okay, you see that small Vav? Okay, and then about 5 words in, you see Rashi Tebot. Vav, Mim, Kaf. Masati Katub be Murdechi. And I found written in the Murdechi, Katub be Kelaf. I found an old parchment of the Murdechi, handwritten manuscript. היה אוכל סעודת פורים בערב שבת, יתפלל ויפרוס מפה ויקדש ובברכת המזון יאמר על הניסים עד כאן לשונו. So keep this in your back of your head. He found, the Ba'er Hitib is telling you, I found a Rishon, I found the Mordechai, who was one of the Rishonim. And I found that the Mordechai wrote that Purim that would fall out on Erev Shabbat, Purim that would fall out on Friday, okay, he would do Perisat Mappa, which we're going to explain in a second, and he would make Kiddush, and then in Birkat HaMazon, he would say Al HaNisim. Now, what is this all about? Go back to page 1 of your source sheets now. Page 1 of your source sheet is from Nahar Misraim. Nahar Misraim, Rabbi Rafael Haron ben Shimon, who was chief rabbi of Cairo, 1891 to 1921. And really, his wording, I think, is really, really apropos with what we were saying before. So we're on top of the page, starts with the Yod Gimel, Be'anyan Zeman Asiyat Sa'udat Purim, regarding the time of doing the Seuda and Purim. Yesh makdimin, veyesh ma'ahirin, ve'en ledavar et kabua. There are those who do it early, those who do it late, and there is no set time. Ha'umnam, but Rob kol yireh Hashem, the majority of God-fearing people, عصيم سعودات بوريم أحار حاسوت سموخ لعيت عرب بعود يوم قدول. Now, it's hard to understand that. So most of the people, the God-fearing people, do it after Hasot, that means after midday, سموخ لعيت عرب, close to the evening, بعيت يوم قدول, while the day, there's still a long portion of the day. Which one is it? Is it سموخ لعيت عرب or is بعيت يوم قدول? So what did he tell you? He explains, شئاس تخلير رجل العنيين المحزرين من السبب عود قبيس لك. Basically, at the time when the aniyim stop going around to collect tzedakah. When they stop, that's when it's time. ve'enan عوسين سعودة ببوكر. And we don't make سعودة in the morning. כי הלא נודע מה שכתב הרמב"ם. If you open up Harambam in the second perek of Hilchot Megillah Halacha Yud Zayin, what does Harambam tell us? Mutab leharbot b'matanot le'ebyonim mileharbot b'saudato ובשלוח מנות לרעב שאין שם שמחה גדולה מפוארה אלא לשמח לב עניים ויתומים ואלמנות וגרים. Harambam tells you Purim is a holiday of simcha, of happiness. And there is no greater happiness than bringing happiness to who? To the aniyim, to the poor, to the yitumim, to the orphans, the almanot, the widows, the gerim, the converts. You know, right? All those people that are on the fringes of society, if you will, the people that are destitute, the people that are not part of the in clan, if you will. Okay? Those people, make them feel good. It's a happy day. It's for them. That's more important than stuffing your belly. If you make your seudah in the morning, okay, and you get drowsy from the alcohol, you sleep, you lose out on so much good. And the aniyim go around collecting until some point after midday. So anybody who is intelligent enough to understand what I'm telling you, he says, definitely do not have seudah in the morning. Only have it after you finish with all the aniyim. And when the aniyim have finished going around. Then he continues, Purim b'erev Shabbat. And when Purim falls out on Friday, the nice and pleasant, good minhag, هو لعصوت السعودة بعرب أحار تفيلات منحة. Make it in the evening after منحة. وبأمسها السعودة, in the middle of the سعودة, pores مبا ومقدش. Spread a tablecloth and say kiddush, and we'll explain that in a minute. Ve'hozer ve'ochel seudat Shabbat, and then go and eat the seudat Shabbat. Ve'chen katab maharikash b'hagahotav, maharikash b'Yaakov Castro. Ve'achar kach mibarchim b'kat hamazon ve'omer al nisim debatar hatchalat seudat azdinan kedebasak maram b'simmat rasa, like we read in Shulchan Aruch a few minutes ago. Ve'chen satam maran la'el siman خف بحيت سعيف يودا سعيف يود بذي حوله بحركة من بليم عربية الشبات, and only after بركات المازون do you pray عربية of Shabbat. وزو هي الدرجة خيوتية شرع, and this is the most straightforward path. وخين هم منهجين بعيد قول يروشلايم, and this is our منهج in يروشلايم. وخين نحن نهجيم, and this is what we are accustomed to do. وخين نهجيم ربيم إليها شيء وحوش شيء, and this is what all the God-fearing people do. So he tells us, like we saw in the Ba'ir Heteb, quoting the Mordechai about Pores Mappa. Now, some of you are familiar with the concept Pores Mappa. We've discussed it many years ago, and some of you are not. So, in the Gemara, in Masechet Pesachim, on page 100, there is a discussion among the Hachamim. I believe it was Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosef. if I'm not mistaken, as to what happens when a person is having a meal on a Friday, and now all of a sudden sunset hits. What do? It's Shabbat. You're not allowed to eat until you say Kiddush, but you're in the middle of a meal. So do you stop the meal? Do you make Birkat Hamazon? Do you just continue eating and you don't have to stop it because you already started before the Shabbat? What is the law? So the way they ended up ruling in the Gemara, they created a term for us called Pores Mapel Mekadesh. Okay, you spread a cloth and make Kiddush. Now, different Hachamim interpret Pores Mapah as either covering all the bread, or some say you cover everything. The way it seems to be really understood in the Gemara is you're really covering everything. But if you can't cover everything, obviously covering the bread would fulfill the same concept. So here's the story now. Pores Mapah Mekadesh. For example, sunset is now at 6 p.m. You look at your watch. I'm eating Seuda. Purim already started at 5 o'clock. We're sitting, we're eating, we're drinking. Obviously now it's Seuda Purim. So most people probably already said Hagif on wine. You're drinking wine as part of your meal. You're trying to make a formal Seuda for the holiday. Most people have already washed their hands and said Mosseri. Okay, and we're eating bread. Shabbat comes upon us. What to do? Pores Mapah Umekadesh. At that point, you could tell the lady of the house, a few minutes before Shabbat, she could light candles right then and there. The men can say Kabbalat Shabbat. Now, Kabbalat Shabbat is technically not obligatory. It didn't even exist in the days of the Tanaim. Didn't exist in the days of the Amoraim. It didn't even exist in the days of the Rishonim. Okay? It is really something that only began at the very, very beginning time of the Aharonim, approximately in 1500, in Safed, in northern Israel. So if you want to do Kabbalat Shabbat, and it's a beautiful thing, you could do it at that point. If for whatever reason you think it's going to detract, it's going to make too much of a commotion at the table, so then you don't have to do it. But I would recommend doing it, okay? Because it helps to bring in that feeling of the Shabbat. That's why it's called Kabbalat Shabbat, the acceptance of the Shabbat. You're welcoming the Shabbat in, and it's a nice thing if you've never done it before to say, for example, Lecha Dodi, with your entire family at the table. It carries a lot of, spirit with it, if you will. You finish Kabbalat Shabbat.
Wait, Joe.
Yes.
What about Arbit?
We didn't get to Arbit. Let me finish. Let me finish, please. You cover the food on the table. You cover the bread. Okay, if you haven't already. Make Kiddush. You'll skip Birkat Bori Friya Geffen because you're already all drinking wine. Okay? And you say Yom HaShishi, and from Yom HaShishi, you go to the second half, okay, to the Beracha of Mekadesh Shabbat. And after that, you drink, everybody tastes wine. Everybody already has wine in front of them, so you don't have to spread out the cup or anything. You already have your wine. Then you uncover the food, uncover the bread, and you end up doing Mosseri without Netilat Yadayim and without saying Mosseri. You just cut from the bread that now you have for Shabbat, and you give everybody more bread than they've already had until this point because they have, the portion for Shabbat now. Okay, so they ate bread for Purim. Now they're eating bread for Shabbat. Give me 1 second, Jack. 1 second. All right. I know you're all going to have questions. I'm going to read
I'm
more
going to
things.
rewind a sec. What if?
I'm sorry? I didn't hear you. Okay. You gave him that. And now you continue eating your meal. Okay? You continue eating whatever, delicious foods are out on the table, whatever is still coming out from the kitchen. You keep eating bread. You keep drinking wine. Whenever you finish the meal, okay, then you have Birkat HaMazon. And the Birkat HaMazon now has both Al HaNisim, okay, and Bimei Mordechai, because you started the Seuda prior to Shabbat on Purim Day. And you also put in the Seva Halisein for Shabbat because it is now Shabbat, okay, and you partook of bread for Shabbat in this Seuda. And after you finish that, now it's time for Arbit after you finish your entire meal. Okay, now obviously if you have minyan in the house, so very nice. If you have minyan together with different neighbors and you've all decided, we're going to get together, we're all going to finish at, let's say, 8 p.m., 9 p.m., whatever the time you decided, beautiful. If you're able to arrange with a bunch of people in the neighborhood and you open up the knis and you want to make minyan over there, great. And if you're too drunk, it's asur to pray. And it's definitely asur to be part of minyan. So you make sure you don't pray. Go to sleep, and when you wake up in the middle of, a few hours later, then get up and pray B'Yahid. But you cannot. Harambam is crystal clear. Shulchan Aruch is crystal clear. And there is nobody that disagrees with this, that when you are drunk, you cannot pray. And you see people praying because, I got to pray. You're drunk. You cannot do it. And people that are running around all day, Purim day, eating and drinking and whatever, because they had their Seuda in the morning, but they're still drinking during the day, and now they're coming to regular Minhan Arbit, let's say at 5:45, because, they're all Hasidim, because they act like Mekubalim in the morning, and now they're praying because they were drinking all day. Trust me, either they're not in Knis at all, or they're praying drunk, and all that's haram. And it's very, very important to keep that in mind. And every bit Knesset should have a monitor, okay, or various committee members and rabbis that tell a person, listen, you look a little bit tipsy, you don't look like you're, in the state of mind to pray, go home. Don't be here. Okay, pray later. You have to give a person a chance to either sleep off the wine, or for the wine or the whiskey or whatever it is you're drinking to wear itself out. So these are very, very important points. Now, we have a lot to read, but I want to hear questions first because I know there's a lot of questions. So who's first? Jack Minesh, you had a question.
All right, so you answered the one about having too much and then going into the tefillah or whatever. So that's that. But what if you didn't have a geffen, or you're having a better wine, say you had mevushal and now you're having non-mevushal, do you still say the kiddush and say a geffen, or is it hatov u'metiv, whatever the beracha is?
So you could make hatov u'metiv at any point. Anytime you bring out a better wine in a meal, okay, that wasn't on the table already, or you weren't expecting, you could always say hatov u'metiv. But you wouldn't make hatov u'metiv as part of the kiddush. Okay? Kiddush is kiddush, and the only beracha, okay, that you would have in normal kiddush, okay, you have hagefen and you have mekadesh Shabbat. In this case, you drank wine. Now, if you have somebody that's at the table that didn't drink wine before, okay, you could have him say hagefen. But most probably, since you started the Seuda as a Seudat Purim on Purim, most probably everybody is already drinking wine. Right? Yes? No? Maybe?
So it should be wine on the Seuda.
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
So it should be wine on the Seuda?
Yes.
Seudat Purim should be? Okay.
Should be meat and wine. meat and wine in Seuda Purim is more important than bread in Seuda Purim. Not everybody says that you have to have bread. Okay? But generally when we hear the word Seuda, we associate it with bread, and we have bread. Okay? So now if somebody didn't have bread, I'm not going to eat so much bread. So since I'm not obligated to eat bread for Seudat Purim, but I'm obligated bread for Shabbat, so maybe that person didn't want to eat the bread before sunset, and now post sunset when it's Shabbat, so give him, that honor of doing Mosseri. Something like that. Good. Next question. You see me had a question? No. Okay. Next. David?
You answered it.
I answered it. Good. Either David. Marky, Carrie, Michael, Jeffrey, anybody have a question?
Could you just clarify what time you should start, or what time?
Yeah, at the very end, we'll go through all the times. Okay, I'm just giving, random times right now just to give it, an idea of what we're talking about. But yeah, it's very easy to, I'm looking at a calendar right now. Friday sunset is at 5:44. So generally we light, except for David Batesh, we light 20 minutes before sunset. David does 18 minutes before. Right, Dave? Okay. So according to the Gemara, and according to the Geonim, and according to Rishonim, okay, at the very least, those major groups, there is no such thing as lighting at a set time prior to sunset, a set time of 40 minutes like they now do in Yerushalayim, or half hour like they do in Haifa, or 20 minutes like Tel Aviv, or whatever it may be, or even 10 minutes or 5 minutes before. According to the Gemara and according to the Geonim and the Rishonim, you light very close to sunset. Okay? So you could say 5:44 is sunset. No, 5:40. Tell the ladies to light, and then you could start with Kabbalat Shabbat at that point. You could tell them to light at the regular time, 20 minutes before, so 5:24, and you could start Kabbalat Shabbat then. But you end up finishing Kabbalat Shabbat, you're at the table. How, Kabbalat Shabbat, that's going to take you what? 5 minutes? 7 minutes? You're going to be done in a second. It all depends how much prior to actual sunset you want to accept Shabbat. Okay, that's why I like the 5:40 idea. And then go right into Kabbalat Shabbat, which takes you right into that point of sunset, and then you go from there right into the Kiddush. That's just my feeling. And then let's say you're going to continue your meal from 5:44 with the Shabbat and Birkat Hamazon and everything, let's say until about 7. You give yourself about another hour for wine to wear off a little bit, an hour, an hour and a half, and you pray Arbit 8:30, depending on what conditions you've set up. That's more or less in a nutshell. Okay. Anybody else? Good. Now we continue. What do we have next on the source sheet? What's in that? What's page 5 over there, or page 2 even we didn't touch? Somebody, Rabbi, what do you have? Rabbi Kasola, what do you have on page 2? Okay, Vayan Shemuel. Vayan Shemuel, Rabbi Shemuel Marciano from Dibdu, Morocco. Interesting. The Marciano rabbis of Dibdu, Morocco, all wore an earring in their right ear. And it's an ancient minhag that they have going back to Spain, or so they claim. Anyway, this is Rabbi Shemuel Marciano. So what does Rabbi Shemuel Marciano say? So we're looking at Siman Kaftet. We're on page 2 of your source sheets over there. And Siman Kaftet. Purim shehal be'ereb Shabbat. Qisad ya'aseh be'ayan al-Sa'udah. Okay, Friday Purim. What do you do about the Seuda? هنا بأورا حييم سمان ترسال في بيت كتاب مرام وشحات بوريم بيوم شيشي عسو السعودة بالشحيد مشون كبو شبال بهرب بإيه تيب سيف كتاب باب كتاب شنو ومساطي كتوب مردخي كتوب الخلاف هي أخير السعودات بوريم بعرف شباي بذير بيفروس مبابي كديش بكتاب مزون يمر عن النسيب. So everything that we read before right at the بإيه تيب he quotes. Then he continues وبمتم موشي وبمنهاجيم كاتبو هوئيل ולא התפלל ערבית, משמע להתפלל שוב אינו אומר על הניסים. ובמהר"ל כתב, לכן אלוהי יברך ברכת מזון תחילה ואחר כך יתפלל ערבית, להוציא עצמו מהפלוגתא. וגם שלא ישתכר ולא יברך ברכת מזון, לא יברך ברכת מזון. עד מגן אברהם עד כאן לשונו. ובסימן רש עין א' כתב מרן, אסור לטעום כלום קודם שיקדש אפילו מים ואפילו אם התחיל בעוד יום. צריך להפסיק שפורס מפה ומקדש, וכתב ברתב סעיף קטן ה' ופשוט אין צריך להתפלל ערבית אם הוא פורס מפה ומקדש כיוון שהתחיל בהיתר כדין כל תפילת ערבית פורי זהב. עוד כתב מרן בסוף בסימן זין, ואם היו שותים יין תחילה אינו אומר אלא קידוש בלבד ולא ברכת היין, ואחר כך מברך המוסי, וכתב בהיתר סעיף קטן זין, שותים יין תחילה, רבנן למדו שהיו שותים. Bottom line is, everything that I explained to you, he said the same thing over here based upon the different sources. He just told you where each part of the breakup that I gave you comes from. And he obviously disagrees with Muram for eating in the morning, and he agrees with the concept of the Gemara of Pores Mapah Umekadesh. So, very simple. So now we have Rishonim, we have Aharonim, and you have page 5. We don't need to see because that's the Erech Lechem of Maharikash, which we quoted before. We have then Kiryat Hanna David. Okay, and I'm going to skip it for now, as well as Sha'alu Baruch. I want to skip both of those for the moment, and I want to jump to Yabia Omer of Hacham Wadiyah Yosef. Okay, I believe that's page 10 of your source sheets. We don't usually look at Yabia Omer because Teshuvot happen to be very, very lengthy, very complicated, very difficult to study in such a setting. But I think for tonight, we are going to look at this Teshuvah because it bothers me. It bothers me a lot. I don't like the way Hacham Wadiyah approached some of the issues here, and it's going to help us go into the next source after that. Here we go. So we're on, this is Yabia Omer, volume 11. Now, volume 11 obviously came out after Hacham Wadiyah Yosef passed away. Okay, it was from his manuscript. And this is a Teshuvah that he originally wrote in 1941, and then he amended in 1950, and probably again later on in his life before it went to print. And here's the question: Purim shehal liyot be'erev Shabbat. As everything else that we're doing, what is the law of Purim on a Friday as far as the Seuda? Do it in the morning or do it in the afternoon like any other Purim. So we're going to start with the first column, that first paragraph, the one that says Aleph. You all see the Aleph over there? Hinne Minhag? Yes? Good. Hinne Minhag ze שנהגו לעשות הסעודה אחר מנחה נזכר בתרומת הדשן. The custom of having a post-mincha Seuda is fairly old, as it's mentioned in the Terumat edition. Hubab Beit Yosef, and it's brought in the Beit Yosef. Bechatab Ta'am she'en osim otab shahrit. Okay, and he brought the reason over there, and we don't make Seuda in the morning. Why? She'terudim. We're busy. B'mishloach manot u'matanot le'ebyonim. We're busy with the other mitzvot. ואין פנאי לאכול הסעודה בשמחה. and therefore, because we're busy with other mitzvot, we are not free and open to have a meal with happiness. Right? Imagine trying to sit down and eat, and somebody keeps knocking on your door every minute, up and down, up and down. You don't enjoy it. There's no simcha, there's no seuda. V'siyem she'af she'yeshev ha'minhag, and he concluded that even though he rectified the reasoning for this minhag, rather, who v'rabbotav nahagu la'asot ikar ha'seuda b'shahrit. Him and his rabbis had the custom to have the bulk of the meal in shahrit. V'harama b'derkei Moshe. Muram, as we know, we saw his Haggahot Aruch. He has a book called Derkei Moshe. Katab, the Minhagim, there's a book of Minhagim of Ashkenazim by Mahari Tirna. Ita, sheyesh la'asota b'boker k'shahal Purim yom shishi. Like we read in the Haggahot of Muram, that if it falls out on Friday, it is their custom to have it in the morning. But on the other days of the week of Purim, you have it after Minha. ومن الشاس نلقى قصات شريعة عصين وتاب بالشحريت لنجا لا بلو التور البنات تريد بسعودة بوريم إذا كأمارة بكهنا يبيد المخلاء بأبتاه عدد دحوه بدبعين هي بيوم يبيد الإمار دي عسوها بالشحريت. So Chama Yosef is trying to give a proof from the Gemara Megillah that it's possible that in those days they used to have Seuda and Shahrit. إلا فداي شبئمت هيازة بالشحريت فهي حوشيب شيء السعودة بالليلة بكل يوم مقداش التوراة بحشيبود بعينا باليوم وميلاد زريزين مقدرين بالشحريت. Because they would dedicate the entire day to Torah, they would definitely have to have the Seuda in the morning. That's basically his proof over there. وميلاد زريزين مقدرين بالشحريت. بخين اسكيمو كما حرونيم شان نخون لعصوتها بالشحريت. And there are a number of Harunim that agree that it should always be in Shahrit. Okay, and so it is according to the Mekubalim to have the Seuda Purim in the morning, always, no matter what day of the week. Kimosh Katab Kafahayim, Kafahayim Sofer, and both Kafahayim Halachi are both of the opinion to have the Seuda of Purim always in the morning. And the Shela, and the Gira, and the Purim Megadim, the Harashash, they all say to have it in the morning. And therefore it's always proper to have Seudat Purim in the morning. But those who always have the custom to do it after Minha, they have sources upon which to rely. So Chama Yosef's position is that if it's a Friday Purim, have the Seuda in the morning. All right. This is Chama Yosef's position. And now, again, very uncharacteristic for him to give his bottom line position at the very beginning of the Teshuvah, especially the Teshuvah and Yabia Omer. Yabia Omer, he tends to keep you hanging. Okay, he goes through pages until he lets you know towards the end, or at least towards the middle, what direction he wants to take and why. But for him to open up from the very beginning and tell you his position, I've never come across it before. Okay? Now he starts. We go into section Bet. Tells you, now we're going to get to that. That's part of our source sheets. The Zera Emet is a very, very fascinating book. It's a 3-volume She'elot Shuvot by Rabbi Ishmael Kohen from Italy. And Rabbi Ishmael Kohen, Zera Emet, brings us an actual case of a Friday Purim in Italy. Obviously, it was the whole world, obviously. And we're dealing with the year 1798. So we're going to get to that Teshuvah, I hope. Okay? And I'm going to try to read through the part of this rather quickly, not explain word for word. שכתב בן דידן שפלה מנחה בעודהם גדול ויתחיל סעודה ויסמוך שבת ידך לבית הכנסת לקבל שבת בסיבוב ויחזור יפרוש מפה ויקדש ויאכל. Okay, so first thing he tells us, the Zera Emet tells us that start the Seuda even on a Friday Purim after Mincha, and when he gets close to Shabbat, let's do this. Get up off the table, go to the Knis for Kabbalat Shabbat and Arbid with your minyan, come back, spread a cloth, take Kiddush, and continue eating. You didn't have to say Birkat Mazon in between because you planned on continuing eating, even though you left the house even. Going to Knis to pray is not considered hefsek in the meal. And even though, yes, it's true, he got to get up from his spot, and the ruling in Shulchan Aruch like Harambam, okay, technically you have to make a beracha. But the Tosafot v'harosh la sabira lehu hachi. But the Tosafot and the Rosh do not agree with that ruling. V'chen pasak harama. V'chen hacha in sarich lebarich keven sheta'un beracha b'komo. He doesn't have to make a beracha because he's still coming back to the same place to eat. He didn't eat someplace else in between. V'afsha ataz mahmir. And there are sources based upon what do you call the Eliyah Rabbah to do such a thing, even if you go to Knis. But since we're concerned with Shulchan Aruch, because it's Shulchan Aruch, leave somebody, one or two people there at the table. You know, that way, you know, you've not completely stopped the Seudah, but there's what seems to be a continuum where there are people at the site of the meal and basically they're your representatives there. Okay? You left collateral at the table, in a sense. And regarding Berachah Puri Geffen of Kiddush and Netilat Yadayim and Hamusi, it's a mahloket, whether you have to make these berachot or not. And since it's a mahloket, safik berachot lakir. When in doubt about a beracha, we're lenient. No beracha. You got up. You left your house. You went 6 blocks away to pray. You came back. You continue eating. No beracha. Uma shekatab taz. And what the Taz writes, that when you are praying, okay, I'm sorry, you don't have to pray Arbit first. And you should not pray Arbit early before the Seudah. Therefore, begin the Seudah close to sunset. Because if you're starting it early, it doesn't look like you're doing Seudah Purim anymore. Okay, and regarding Al Nisim and Reseh, generally we say the beginning of the Seudah is the main gist of it. And only say Al Nisim and don't say Reseh. But that's not right based upon the Taz and the Tosafta. When you have extra Kedusha, you have to add that as well. He argues when you have two, what do you call, opposing views. וכיוון שזה לכול העלמא והיא מחלוקת וכי דעת עלי רבה ואין דבר של התז במקום שנים שלהם אף התז יודע כאן שפלה ערבית כנו אחד מהריד על כאן תוקן דבריו הרב זה אמת. So he basically takes a teshuvah of the Zera Emet. He summarized for us in, I would say, not the most flattering of terms. Okay, he doesn't shamble it, but it doesn't make it look so beautiful. Look like it's makes it look a bit shoddy, if you will. Now continue. وبما دساليك افتح ما شكتب شلو يسكير على نسيب إلى رسي هنا ما جينا أبراهام كان يسكي شيء بالله حركة في يسين بلوكتا إذا ما جينا أبراهام says no just pray afterwards and then you what do you call it you get yourself out of this confusion يدعت المردخين شقام بهتبلل شل شبات يومر على نسيب وبوخام إزاي دلاف داف كان كاتم مردخين بالله بريشا بلاف دا عكوبا كابات الزراعيمات يمكن ما تكين لما جينا ابراهام لسي يدي حوات المردخي بعد كين ماش كتب الزراعيمات شا مردخي نقدر التلبة زي بهبيد دبريهم ما جينا ابراهام إنه مخراه again all this has nothing to do with it على كين إما عصير السوداء سموخ لعربيد بالليلة حرقة if you make the السوداء close to what do you call it, the time for عربيد you make the السوداء and after the السوداء you pray عربيد وخموش كتاب ما جينا ابراهام like the ruling of the ما جينا ابراهام Bechen Pasak Hamishna Berura, and Mishnah Berura also tells you that what you would do. Bechen Katab B'Sefer Nahar Misraim. Now watch what he does. Remember, Nahar Misraim was page 1, who really praised this whole concept. Shehaminhag Hayefiv HaNa'im Kishahal Purim Be'erev Shabbat, that the pleasant and just minhag when Purim falls out on Friday, La'asot Seuda Be'erev Ahar Tifat Minha. To make the Seuda in the evening after Minha. And in the midst of the meal, when it becomes sunset, that's when you would spread your cloth and make douche. And you continue as Seuda Shabbat. And that is what was ruled by Maharikash, Yaqub Kasro. And then afterwards you say Birkat Hamazon with Al Nisim. And finally Arbit. And that is our custom of Yerushalayim. This is, until this point, this is what Nahar Misraim told us about Rafael. Now, listen to Achan Waya Yosef over here. Uma shekor'o minhag yafeh v'na'im. And what he calls, okay, a nice and pleasant minhag, and he ultimately praised such a custom. Lo yadati lama yanhigu la'asot as-Seuda b'shahrit kinizker la'il. Okay, why didn't he instruct them to take upon themselves a custom to have the Seuda in Shahrit, like I told you earlier? Because that's better than praying Arbit B'Yahid. Now, even if you find a minyan, still Shahrit, Seuda and Shahrit is better, he's telling you. يهي روشو سحرحار محمد أقيلة وشتيا بريبو ينود بشيخار, because his head is now free and clear and it's not heavy from the meal and from the drinking and from the company and from everything that was going on. וידוע דפחהי גבנה לא יפלל לכתחילה. And we know when a person is intoxicated, okay, inebriated, he is not allowed to pray l'chatahillah. כמו שכתב מגן אברהם שבסעודת שמחה כגון ביום טוב, in the סעודה of שמחה, happy שמחה like יום טוב, אפילו בסעודה אין להורות. Even in the, you can't give a ruling in the midst of סעודה, because your head is not focused, not straight. Now we're on top of the next page. Okay, giving a halachic ruling or praying are on the same level. So if you can't do this, you can't do that. ואפילו ישן בינתיים לא מהנה ביותר מרביעי אלא אם כן הוא שינה מרובע. Okay, and even if he takes a nap in between, a nap is not enough, he's telling you. Okay? So the nap is only gonna get rid of, the effects of about 3 ounces of wine. You know, you need to have a really big sleep, he's telling you. ואם כן, מי יודע אם לא תמשך שינתו עד שיפסיד קריאת שמע תפילה. Who knows if his sleep is not going to drag out until he actually misses קריאת שמע תפילה. ועל כל פנים ודאי לא ימצא מניין. And in any case, it's surely not going to find a minyan. ואם כן, למה ישבח מנהג זה? Why should Rabbi Nahar Mosseri come along and praise such a minhag? בשעה שהפוסקים כתבו להפך, when the other poskim wrote the opposite. והוא הנכון, and they're right and he's wrong. ולא יועיל מנהג זה, and this minhag is not good and is not helpful, אלא למי שטרוד ואנוס מלעשות בשחרית. Only for that person who's busy and impossible for him basically to have a morning seuda. איך שיהיה מדבריו למדנו שהתפילה בסוף אם כן לא יאמר עשה. The only thing we learned from him is you're praying at the end, and since you're praying at the end, you don't say it. I don't know where he saw that. וכן כתב בשאלות תשובות קריאת חנה דוד, which we skipped so far, חלק ב'. וכן במאירי כתובות שנהגו את פורים כשחל בערב שפורסים מפה ומקדשים. So what he's quoting now is the קריאת חנה דוד, which we skipped, which I think on page 7 or so. He says to do Puris Mapa Mekadesh type of meal on a Friday Purim. And the Meiri, who's also a Rishon from Provence, also wrote that that is the ancient custom in their community and in his family's tradition. So I don't want to read more of what he's saying over here. Okay, so far. But at this point, I'm very bothered. When I read this Teshuvah, when I got to this point, I'm like, how's he attacking him? When the Nahar Mosseri came, he called you Harambam. He said, we always have the Seudah late in the day. They were busy with the Anin. We're busy with other things. Okay? On a Friday, the woman of the house is possibly even busy preparing for Shabbat, you know. And now you're telling everybody, don't change your day, come in the morning, make the Seudah. Who knows how long that Seudah is going to stretch, how dirty the house is going to get from it in the morning. You have to start and clean up everything and start again from scratch. You know what kind of work that is for the members of the household, for the lady of the house, you know. How is he coming and attacking it in the way that he's attacking it when you have, this is Din Gemara, of doing Puris Mapa Mekadesh on any Friday, okay? When you have the Rishonim like the Mordechai and the Mordechai and the Meiri, both telling you to do Puris Mapa Mekadesh on a Friday Shabbat, and now he comes and attacks Nahar Mosseri for this. To me, it doesn't sit well. In the next paragraph now that starts Gimel, we don't have to read the whole thing. Okay, I just want to see if there's something towards the bottom of it I want to see. Give me 1 second. You know, let's read it. Yes, let's read Gimel. Okay, Gimel. فهي إمتى جيب له خاكي جم زي كشيء بعينها شكير وشبورس مقام مكدش بحال شباب جم كذا شيء يومي يصير ده حوات سعودة كذا مثلا إن كذا جل يكون سعودة يمكن بين دات ماران بين دات هرمارة ولا سكيش شباب كمشكاتها هم جين أبراهام بخير هو مش برورا في آخر من شوم تكتير سفير نيح شباب ولا يتاب إنه ما نسين ربنا رعيم شباب بخير شو مير الصياء إنه رشاد وما عايزين يصير كي ما ذاك مجين أبراهام يا رباد إنه ما تكتير سفير بس كمان تزير عيميد هابين يشحاي مش برورا ليش إذا عطونه تيلا زي يمكن يوتر نفون هيا اللي بريك كده مزون ولا عضال اثنين كده شيء يوم في أسكير على نسيم بدو بيبوك حركة في الليل بيقديش بيوخاك مع عصير بخش بات بين صديق الفلوس وفهم قديش بين كان قام سلح حشاش تتلس تري بخيني تدا رامتي يهوداش كتش مجيها جام كشحال بورين بعيله وشباش سعودي مع حال من حق عاشت قديش يوم ومبارخين وكان مزوم على نسيم حركة في الليل مقدشين سعودين شديد بخله وبزي يصير حبات كل الدعوة عين شاب. So his problem so far until this point is that there are different opinions as to whether you would say both al hanisim and riseh, or only al hanisim or only riseh. And because of that issue, he does not like Pores Mapel Mekadesh. But if you want to start a late Seuda, have the late Seuda, stop at sunset, say Birkat Mazon, okay, with only al hanisim, and after, what do you call it, then make douche, and after your next meal, which is really, nothing changed except because you stopped it with Birkat Mazon, you'll say a second Birkat Mazon with only Reseh for Shabbat. That's what he seems to be saying so far. That is what his issue is. والبرابنا يوم أول شيء بزين السونو قام ما شد حق عدين هزير عميد العزوب السوداء ذاك بدك كنيس بإمسا كذا يا رباش لحد لها تاج فهلو قام ربك أبراهام فشير كنيس الجولا كاد ولا حميد به سحداد فيه ودات مران وش كذا بكم حي من هي شيء راح نوقت منها ربان تصفوت بزحين هي وده شيء نع كم كمو تقسودا يمسك بالخير عبار يعطيك هي ما ناس بسفك بالخلا كذا فلوس من مران شبه ساك كذا ربان إذا دافك بدي عباد بل ختح الله ميزه مقيحين ودي كنيس بالسفك العزوب دعت مراش كبان هرقوتاف هلو إفشاش بريخ تيرم شيء عقل مكومو يخدم لها متي يهودا. But now he's all upset about the Zera Emet, who's telling you pick up and leave and go to Knis and then come back. He says, we end up having a problem with the opinions of Maran in different places in Haruch as well as the opinions of Harambam. أفقم زي يش محلوك المباريخ على هيام يدام زي موسيقى شو سبحان مكدش مش كذا زرع عمير بين اسمه بعين بريشونيم بفسحي ليش بيرك على بفسحين بيت يوسف وعلى كين الإيد عن ودعتي and therefore it seems to me شبيوم بوريم شحبر شبات on a Friday بوريم ينهجو كمتى يهودا. They should follow the Matei Yehuda. The Matei Yehuda is telling you, like I said, that you would stop at sunset, say Birkat Mazon, and after Birkat Mazon, start with a new kiddush and a new meal and what do you call it, another Birkat Mazon. V'tamu Ali, I find very strange, he says, the Har Misraim, Shelo Ayin Bishum Perat Mekodin Iskar, who did not look into any of these points whatsoever. How does he know what he looked into or didn't look into? ויעשה לשבח את המנהג שיש בו כמה עיקולי ופישורי. And he came out praising a minhag that has all types of problems. והיה די לו להביאו בסתם, ואין זהו מקומו של שבחים. He goes, he could have mentioned that there is such a custom, and he didn't have to go out and praise it and make it the custom. Okay? We're not going to read the rest of the Abiya Omer because it has nothing else to do with our exact topic at hand. He goes into different issues having to do with Seuda. So that we're going to skip. So, like I said, I read that. It bothered me very, very much. We have the Mordechai and the Meiri, the Rishoni. And then we have, as far as the Haronim. Let's look. We have Nahar Misraim telling you that was the minhag that he grew up with in Yerushalayim. Okay, whenever there was a situation like that. Remember, a Friday Purim for Yerushalayim is different. It means that Shushan Purim, okay, or rather Purim Shushan, to say it technically correct, Purim Shushan, the 15th of Adar would fall out on a Friday, and that happens out more often than you can imagine, believe it or not. We're used to having the Thursday Purim, but for people in Yerushalayim, they would have, on Friday. And that happens quite often. He goes, so obviously he witnessed it and grew up with it many times over there. He saw the same custom going on in Cairo. We have the Kiryat Hanna David, okay, from Rabbi David HaKohen Sakli, who we've quoted in our class many times before, from Oran, Algeria, bringing us that custom. We didn't read him, but he's in your source sheets over there. Rabbi Baruch Abraham Toledano from Meknes, Morocco, bringing us that the minhag, okay, as well of his city and his forefathers. We had Rabbi Shmuel Marciano from Debdu, Morocco, also bringing that. And then we have the Zera Emet from Italy, who we didn't read yet, but Hassan Yosef quoted. So now we have this Din Gemara from the Rishonim and encompassing Eretz Israel, Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, and Italy. And these are the ones that we know about. Now, all these people did this and they had no problem for hundreds of years. But Hamad Yosef tells us that we have to follow the custom of either Muram or of the Mekubalim of doing it in the morning. Against any established, okay, and I'm saying established because I mean old, rather, Sephardic Hachamim. In other words, until 1800 approximately, we never heard of any Sephardic source telling us to make Seudat Purim in the morning. So it's a new concept. So why? Why go against the established protocols, the established custom when we always do Seudat Purim in the afternoon? Everybody knows we do Seudat Purim in the afternoon. So on Friday, you do it later in the day. To combine it with the Shabbat, what we're doing, we're reviving a deen of the Gemara. How often do you have a chance to follow a halakha of the Gemara that was common practice in the Gemara? And not only that, we have one of the most famous medieval Jewish travelers, okay, Benjamin of Tudela, who traveled throughout the world, but when he got to Alexandria, he saw that this was basically their minhag every Friday. They would always be Pores Mapel Mekadesh. They would eat their Shabbat meal prior to Shabbat. It would become sunset. Pores Mapel, they would spread the cloth. They would make Kiddush. After Kiddush, eat Mosseri, okay, and eat just, enough bread, to be considered for Seudat Shabbat, and only bread because they already ate beforehand. And then they would make Birkat Mazon, and after that, they would go to Kinis to pray Arbit, the entire Kihillah. And that was the custom in Alexandria at that time period, every Shabbat throughout the year. Or at least that's what was conveyed to him when he was there and he witnessed it on the few Shabbatot. And they told him that's what we always do. So obviously this is a very old halakha. It's an old minhag. It carries a lot of weight with it. And that beginning only about 200 years ago, they started changing things. Why are we obligated to go along with a change that goes against a beautiful old minhag? Now, as far as Arbit, and I may sound off saying this, Arbit technically is, as we know from the Gemara, Arbit is a reshut. Now, it's a reshut, but we've accepted Arbit, and we pray Arbit. I'm not telling you it's a reshut, you can forget about Arbit. Okay? But we've also studied the concept of Tefillah b'Sibur and Minyan, especially this past year of Corona. And we've re-examined it, and there's no halachic obligation to pray with a Minyan. Okay? And correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, please. If I'm wrong, I'll retract. But as far as I've looked into it, it's not, you cannot tell anybody you're hayyab to pray with a minyan. Okay? It's good advice to pray with minyan. It's proper to pray with minyan. It's advisable to pray with a minyan. Okay? But to not pray with a minyan is not haram. You cannot tell somebody they committed a sin by not praying with a minyan. So you don't have an obligation, and it's in this realm of reshut. So if somebody's praying, alone, okay, after the Seuda, or a few hours after the Seuda, because they weren't ready to pray right away, is it really something to attack? Just a thought, something to think about. Okay, so now I'd like to get some feedback, some questions, some comments, and then we'll see if we're going to move on to the Zera Emet. What's interesting to Shuba? Anybody?
I'd like to take the side of those who hold to have the Seuda in the morning. And I think you, Moreno, gave us the answer before. You said, how can one pray whilst being tired? Le besume does not mean to get drunk. We know that.
No, it does not mean get drunk. Absolutely not.
Okay, everyone is quoting, even the Moram says lishtaker.
Right.
And everybody is quoting that adage, which becomes part of Torah shebichtav. You shouldn't know between Arur Haman and Baruch Mordechai.
Okay.
You can't do it both ways. You have to pray with a clear mind.
Absolutely.
So that's the reason why it should be done in the morning, before 12, before 1.
Okay.
And then you can rest, you can do matanot, because in the hierarchy of the mitzvot, first comes, you said it, Megillah, then comes matanot la'abyonim, then comes Shachmanot, then comes Seuda. Right?
I think so.
So if you're having the Seuda at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and you're telling me le besumeh, which unfortunately is mistranslated, and then you add Arur Haman and Baruch Mordechai, you're coming to the synagogue with an unclear mind, like Shabuot morning. If you stay up all night, we discussed this in the past, and you're receiving the Torah half sleeping, half awake. Here you're doing arbit. Okay, it's a reshut. It's not chobah. You don't have to go to minyan. But even at home, how can you pray if you're half drunk?
Mm-hmm.
So I want you to. So in my hierarchy, I have Seuda and Tefillah takes precedence. Shouldn't it? Maybe I'm wrong.
So say again, you have?
In the hierarchy that I'm holding, there's Seuda and Tefillah.
Okay.
To me, Tefillah takes precedence.
Tefillah takes precedence.
With a clear mind. Tefillah with kavanah. Without lebesumeh, whatever that means. Without Baruch Mordechai. So I don't think Obadiah Yosef didn't mention it. You did before, but perhaps this is in the back.
In a sense that we never do. Okay, this is affording us the opportunity to do it. In other words, on a regular instance, we have no reason to be doing it. Okay, as it is, we are generally rushing to get to Shabbat. We enter Shabbat in the nick of time. We don't have time to be sitting down leisurely, for an hour or 2 hours prior to Shabbat, having a festive meal. That doesn't happen. But now, because we have Purim, we're there. You're in a situation where you normally would not be. And therefore you have this opportunity to do this, we'll call it, oddball halacha. Okay? That's all I'm saying. Yeah, go ahead. Jeffrey, please.
Beautiful shiur, so thorough and so much support for a very novel idea, and that solves a lot of problems. I just can't get my head around something.
Please.
When you study, correct me if I'm wrong, Pores Mapa, in the Talmud examples, it strikes me as like a b'di'avad. And now you're planning a b'di'avad, which we're not allowed to do. Or is that not the case? Am I mischaracterizing?
No, I don't know if you're mischaracterizing or not. Everybody views things in different ways. I'll give you an example. This morning, having a discussion with 2 other people, I'm not going to mention their names right now. Okay, we're having a WhatsApp discussion about Seudat Purim. Okay, we were not talking about this option of Pores Mapel Mekadesh. We discussed it ad nauseum for the last 2 days, and so we were discussing a different aspect, and it kept coming up for the last few days. But what about halab? What about halab? What about halab? Well, we can't find the source. We can't find any source. We can't find anything written. We can't find anything written. Lo and behold, from one guy to another guy to another guy to another guy, I got my hands on a book that is from Halab, from one of the Hachamim of Halab, where he writes something about Friday Purim. Let me pull out the exact words so you could hear it. וצריך לכוון בברכת שהחיינו על המתנות לאביונים ועל משלוח מנות וסעודת פורים. Okay? וצריך, you have to, correct? You all agree that you have to have kavanah when you have the ברכה שהחיינו for the Megillah, that this בשחיינו is also for מתנת לאביונים, משלוח מנות and סעודת פורים. והסעודה בשנה הזאת, שהוא ביום שישי, צריך לעשותה בחסות היום. Okay? וגם הסעודה צריכה להיות בבשר ויין. So he gave us, he opened up בצריך, לכוון, on the ברכת שהחיינו. Then he said, Sarich la'asuta b'hasot hayom. You have to do it at midday. And then, Siricha l'hiyot basar v'yayin. The meal must have, okay, or has to have meat and wine. Now, this is the way I read it. B'sarich, you have to. The other guy tells me, no, that's not what sarich means. Sarich la'asuta b'hasut hayom, as opposed to doing it later in the day. Okay, so the sarich means basically any time from the morning until hasut. The other guy says, no, sarich la'asuta b'hasut hayom means not before midday, and only from midday until later in the day. Three different guys, each guy well-versed, okay, each guy with sources and backing, and each one of us read this three words in a completely different way. So, Jeffrey, are you reading the Gemara correctly or incorrectly? You're reading it the way Borei Olam put your mind in place. When I read the Gemara, all right, as far about that initial stance of Pores Mapel Mikadesh, I see the Hachamim dealing with reality. Here we are. What do we do? This is what's happening right now. What is halacha lema'aseh? Now, yes, now you could see, okay, we happen to get to such a situation. And now I want to take it and use it, as you said, you know, from a b'di'avad for a lechatahillah. But isn't that everything in the Gemara? Everything in the Gemara is our basis for every book of She'elot and Shuvot that I have here and elsewhere. Because without all those various cases and those concepts and those ideas, Halakha Moshe Sinai and Torah Sheba'al Peh stopped. The Mishnah, with its interpretation of the Gemara, is our foundation for Torah Sheba'al Peh, for us to carry Torah Sheba'al Peh from generation to generation to generation. And we have to use those cases, you know, in the Gemara and the foundations that are there to make halakha applicable to the cases that we have and how to use them and how to decide if something is, you know, mutar or asur, you know, and how to put it into play. So, yeah, if you want to look at it within a vacuum, if you will, yeah, that was the case. Happened to be one night like that, and okay. And it's not, you know, it's not part of anything. But obviously it is part of something, by telling you that they did it l'chetahillah, Shabbat, if the Shabbat in, at the very least, we know of in Alexandria in the Middle Ages, okay? But we know about this Friday Purim scheme that was done in various cities in various countries, enacted by different hachamim. So it's not something that they finagled, if you will. It was, that's the way they read halakha, and the way they understood halakha, and the way they used halakha. That's my interpretation now of that. Okay? Makes sense? A little bit, I hope. Good. All right. Next question. Somebody. Mark, Nassim, Michael, David, Carrie, anybody? Okay, we move on.
I just have a
Please,
one of my personal things is, I'm not 16 anymore, so eating, I don't eat as much as I used to.
Correct. I was going to touch that.
So
I'm happy you bring it up.
I don't eat a big lunch usually anymore, and I have one Seuda. If I eat at 11:30, I'm really not going to eat so well Shabbat. But we complain about massive parties in the summers all the time. Same idea. I mean, okay, you'll say it's a little bit, there's a further distance between. Okay, somebody can make that argument. But in terms of the kabod for Shabbat, I think that the meal is very important. And I think you're going to take away from, that idea of your Seudat Shabbat. I think it works wonderfully. I really feel like it gives you the kabod for both Purim, and it gives us kabod for Shabbat. And you get your mitzvot to put in all the other things. But for me personally, it's the meal. I don't think people ate 2 meals a day like this, like they would do anyway, back then, in olden times anyway. They would have one big meal, their early dinner.
Right. So I was definitely thinking about, the concern with eating, 2 big meals. And we could easily compare it to Yom Tov. We have lunch on the first day of Yom Tov, and then dinner for the second night of Yom Tov. Everybody's like, "Oh, I'm stuffed. We ate a big meal already," and here we are. Even 6 hours later, okay. Every hostess knows that if she's doing the second night of the holiday, nobody's eating. It just just reality. How much, can you expect people to eat? You're going to give them 2 major meals. If you think you sell that for Purim is going to be a major meal. And of course, Shabbat is always a major meal. And you can't expect people to eat it. You'll have, like you said, a 16-year-old will, eat plenty, but just for the sake of eating. But they're not really into the concept of the nuances of the Seudah itself. Whereas bringing the Seudot together into one festive meal where you carry the Simcha of Purim into the Oneg of Shabbat, I think it has a lot to it, especially when you do the Kabbalat Shabbat and then you start doing this whole concept of Poris Mapam Kadesh. You raise awareness at the table of Torah, of Torah Shebechlav, Torah Sheba'al Peh, how Jewish communities do things, of history. I think it brings a lot to the holiday and what it is. That's just my own personal feeling from doing it in the past. Now, I didn't answer Rabbi Kasola's concerns. Rabbi Kasola brought up very valid points about something that we see nowadays, drunkenness. It's not something we grew up with, okay? Growing up, we definitely did not see people drunk as we see them today. And could this be a concern of Chacham Yosef with the drunkenness? You know what? It's possible. It's very possible. But considering the years he wrote the Teshuvot, that drunkenness wasn't happening, to the best of my knowledge. If he wrote the Teshuvot, in the 70s, late 70s, 80s, 90s, yes. You had all types of, people getting super intoxicated, and doing disgusting things. But in the 40s, no. I don't think so. Not that I know of. It wasn't happening. And we as Sephardim, the concept of getting drunk never existed. Not on Purim, not at any time. It's something unknown to us. And even among Ashkenazim, growing up, it didn't exist except in, I'm sorry to say it, in yeshiva circles. You went to your regular Ashkenazi neighbor, they weren't getting smashed. They weren't getting drunk. Only the guys who were in the yeshiva setting, for some reason, saw this new mitzvah, to just let loose. It's not part of Yahadut. It doesn't exist. I could see where you're coming from if you know that you're in a situation where the people are definitely getting, drunk no matter what you tell them. So you want to have that Seuda early. But once you start that Seuda, they're drinking, Rabbi. So they'll be drinking at 10 a.m. Okay? And they're going to continue drinking all day long. And we see it here on the streets of Brooklyn. And it's disgusting. Those people are not praying Minha. They cannot pray Minha. They're not praying Arbit. They cannot pray Arbit. So all you're doing to them is you're just telling them start drinking earlier and you have a longer day to drink. Okay? So I understand your concern and you brought up a very valid point, but at least for this locale, I would tell them you're not allowed to drink until late in the day. Okay? And even if I know for sure they're going to completely miss Arbit, at least they only missed Arbit, and they were drunk for a shorter period of time. That's my take on it. David Batesh, you're on the streets. You see the people on Ocean Parkway. Well, what do you have to say to that?
Ridiculous.
Ridiculous. There's more drunk people than not drunk people, correct?
Yep. And you see Hatzalah making calls to drunk people that drink too much, alcohol poisoning. Tons.
Yeah. Purim has turned into, unfortunately, a Hilul Hashem. Okay? The Italians that I know in the neighborhood, the few that are still around, they call it Jewish Halloween, Jewish Mardi Gras. They know that on a day like that, if an ambulance has to come down the street or a fire engine has to come down the street, they're not getting down the street. The Jews, all the drunk Jews are not letting them down the street because they're too busy creating, mockery. So it's a disgusting day, unfortunately. So keep Purim low key and do Seuda with your family in a dignified manner late in the day. Go into Shabbat. I think Pores Mapel Mekadesh actually works well. That's just my take on it. Okay? I think it carries a certain kabod with it. And like I said, it brings ideas and concepts of Yahadut, to the table, things that you could share with your family, because everybody's going to be like Pesach, Manishtanah, what's going on now? What's happening? What are we doing? I've never seen this before. So I think it's a good thing in that sense. Okay? As far as this particular piece that I read for you from Aleppo, it was from Hacham Yaakov Dweck, his book Sherit Yaakov. It's a book of speeches and Musar more than anything else. And in the midst of that, he brings some halachot. And he passed away in 1919. And the last Friday Purim before his passing was in 1910. So I'm going to assume that was a speech from 1910. Okay, where he said to have the Seuda Purim on a Friday at Hasot. Now you interpret it for what you will. Does it mean Hasot exactly? Does it mean in the morning until Hasot, or does it mean from Hasot onward? We don't know what he meant. Okay, 3 different people read it 3 different ways. Okay, I'd like to look at some of Zera Emet if you want to do that, or you want to look at Kriyat Hana David, or you want to look at Shalul Baruch. Anybody, give me your opinion.
What's the difference in all?
So Zera Emet is Rabbi Yishmael Kohen, which Rabbi Ovediah Yosef did not like. And that's from Italy. That's a Teshuvah having to do with Purim of 1798. The other two, I said Kiryat Hanna David, Rabbi David Kohen Sakli from Oran, Algeria, also pro Puris Mapam Kadesh. And the other one is Sha'alul Baruch, Rabbi Baruch Toledano from Meknes, Morocco, also about Puris Mapam Kadesh. So those are more recent. Let's say those are both, let's say 1930, 1940, as opposed to 1798.
Can you summarize the amount?
I didn't hear you, Rabbi. What did you say? Can I summarize what?
Can you summarize their conclusions? It's a little
Yeah,
late.
well, first of all, we can look at it very easily. Look at Kiryat Hana David. You have it on your sheets. Okay, I'll tell you exactly what sheet you're on. I gave you everything. The sources, that we're not going to come across too often. So Kiryat Hana David is page 6 of your sources. So let's look at it. It's not a long piece at all. Okay, Kiryat Hana David is 2 volumes. This is volume number 2. We're on page 54. Hacham David Kohen Sakli. And Seudat Purim, Shehal Be'alu Shabbat. Nir'eli, so it seems to me, the Hanachon, who the Sarich, then Ho Ka. Because what does it appear to me to be the correct thing to do? In other words, he was asked what to do on a Friday Purim. The Yathil Seudato Mibbe'od Yom, begin your Seudah Mibbe'od Yom, in other words, prior to sunset at some point. Ushekadesh Alav Hayom, and when the day becomes sanctified upon him, in other words, at sunset when Shabbat hits, Pores Mapa Umekadesh. Kemo Shabbat Shu'aruch Ora Hayim Simman Resh Ayin Alif Sa'if Dalit. So there's a halacha that we set up the Gemara, which appears in Shulchan Aruch, which appears in all the Rishonim, that at that point you would do Pores Mapa Umekadesh. And since you were already drinking wine beforehand, you do not make the beracha for the prayer gefen. You only make the kiddush part, which is the kaddish Shabbat. Then you return to your meal without netilat yadayim. In the barich. וכן משמע מדבריו גם כן בסימן קוף עין ח' בפסק שאם אמר הבלן ונבריך והיסח הדעת ואסור לו לשתות אלא אם כן יברך והאכילה דינה כשתייה להרוש. And since that was your intention to continue your meal, you continue your meal without yadayim, without hamusi, and you go on. من الآلي دجان مش كتب هراب مجين إبراهيم اسمه كوف عين حيس عيفاف ده مش كتب هراش حمد الله لا به السيك بين سريق البريب كذا موسي إبراهيم يكون مكون يدان بإيه به سحدات من الآلي دوك بسكت في الله شيء بشهود كل خاف أبا بكدوش إن بشهود كل خاف وعناب بدحوب بكوحات على بعوج كدوش هو سرق سعودات لهذه السحدات لذين إن سريق الكلا فأيام بسمان عار بهجها يوم بكتب موصولي وكان كمان شيئين البريق مشون ده في سكر بكتب موصولي البريق بكتبه إيه معقول سوي بياخدها كيف شو كسر راب الرحيم يبدأ رب يورا برها أمام مردخاء بسمنا عار ونيات في الله إن في الليل عاد شيء مستعودته because you don't pray arbit until you finish your meal في بريق بكتب مازون and only after the meal in بكتب مازون when you would pray في أمور با على النسيم فحركة في الليل كديش إنه يو كتر إيه بتر كتاب شيء مرام من أبراهام لما تم شيء من هجيم شلا دارين كلهم عونيم كي حال شيئين لو مرة النسيم كتب مازون إلا إم عدين لو في الليل إذا خير كتب يوهين جبريل كتب مازون تحلا بحقي في الليل ويوصي عصمهم في البتاع هاكي نكتينان بعينا يكدوش مثلا. So basically, if you end up praying before saying Birkat Hamazon, then in the Birkat Hamazon you would not be able to say Al Muslim anymore. But once you're saying Birkat Hamazon before praying Arbit, then you would be saying the Al Muslim. And بس بسجادة بفسحيم وبريش الأشباش بتسوي شلام بس كهروش إن شاء وين بربيهم بتوسع بسمان عار بهارا Beit Hadash, well, then basically based upon Shulchan Aruch, he goes, I put together my ruling based upon different halachot in different places in Shulchan Aruch, and anybody who knows Shulchan Aruch can figure out that would be the proper way to do it. That is just teshuvah in a nutshell. As far as Sha'alu Baruch looks like a long teshuvah in what you have, because you have his son added footnotes at the bottom of the page, but really what Rabbi Toledano wrote is very, very short. Basically, he wrote the same thing, that all we do is what do you call the Pores Mapal Mekadesh, and there's no reason to do anything else. There's no reason to think about eating in the morning or having numerous meals in the day. We have one meal that we start on Purim day and we go into Shabbat and we're done with everything. So everything is very, very clear as far as that's concerned. And that's it. I don't think there's anything else to discuss on this topic. I know that in certain synagogues in the community, they are trying to steer people away from this concept. They feel that it's a foreign concept. Some of them rightly so, because it will confuse their congregants if you really didn't study the subject properly, or if the synagogue or rabbis did not prepare a timesheet for you of what to do step by step, page by page, what book, okay, open up your Sidur and read from this page to this page now, then go back to your meal. I could understand how people would get confused. But for those who have studied the subject, or those that have to work on Purim day, not everybody has the luxury of taking off, okay? And then to be able to have a Seuda as well. Or those who may, let's say you work, who are you going to have a Seuda with at work? And no kosher restaurant is really going to be open on Purim day for you to go, leave work, let's say, for an early lunch and go to a kosher restaurant and sit down and have a Seuda. That's also not an option for people, because that opportunity doesn't afford itself. So what are you supposed to do? Just sit at work at your desk and eat a pastrami sandwich by yourself? That's not a festive meal for Purim day. So in that sense also, the concept of Pores Mapal Mekadesh, where you're able to get together with your family, works out. Purim morning, we also know different people go to different minyanim to pray at different times, and then they're rushing out because I want to take Mishloach Mano to that one, I want to take Mishloach Mano to that one. When are you all going to get together in the morning? So everybody's going to eat their own private Seuda. I don't think it works well for most people. I understand that the synagogues and the rabbis that are pushing that idea because it's easy. Just tell the people, make Seuda in the morning, let them figure out, everybody in their own household, how they're going to get their family together. That's not our problem. But we have alleviated ourselves from dealing with people, messing things up later on in the day. I got it. But if you could teach certain people what to do and make a minyan, in certain synagogues, available to them, or neighborhoods. Okay, we're going to meet at this guy's house in that corner, to go pray. What's wrong? I think it's a beautiful thing. That's my take on it.
In terms of the complication argument, I mean, the Haggadah is probably the most complicated thing that we do in terms of meals.
Yes, but you have a set order in front of you.
Okay, so let's put out a set order.
Okay.
It's half a page probably.
It's nothing.
Yeah.
So I did it the other day for somebody. Somebody asked me to do it, and I said, okay, what Sidur do you usually use? They told me they use a Kol Yaakov Sidur. I took out the Kol Yaakov. Okay, you're going to do this at this point, from this time to this time. At this time, you're going to do this. At this time, you're going to go back to your Sidur, you're going to say this. I told them page by page what to do. They said, oh, can you write it down for me? I'm like, oh, you can write it down now. I ordered it for you. Okay. So yeah, I could type something up and we could all circulate it.
No, that's just pointing out that.
No, you're right.
It's very complicated. Like we're not, stopping that. So.
And you know what? You know how many people mess up every year? Even with a Haggadah in their hand, people mess up. They don't know what to do. It happens. Okay. But at least we did due diligence. We gave them, to the best of our ability, we've given them the tools to be able to know what to do. Well, what can you do more than that? You know, but if you have people that study Torah on a regular basis, and to tell those people you have no choice but to only do Seuda Shahrit. And these are people that go and quote unquote learn every day. Why? What are you afraid of? Are you afraid of showing them what the Amoraim were doing? You're afraid to show them the Rishonim? You're afraid to show them Sephardic Aharonim? Because these things aren't, you know, what they're going to pick up, you know, when they're hanging out with their friends or they're in a yeshiva crowd or when they go to their every 7-year Daf Yomi celebration. I don't get it. Why the apprehension, you know, to embrace what I call Din HaGemara? That's just my take on it. I don't know. I understand the people that can't do it for different reasons, people that see it's going to mess things up for them, people with what Rabbi Kasola is saying, the issues of drunkenness. I hear all of that. Give the people the option. Teach them. At least teach them, and then they can decide what to do. I think we've covered all aspects, unless I'm missing something somebody has a question about. Yes? No?
To do Kabbalat Shabbat with the family, which you said before, is very beautiful. I mean,
yes, it is.
Which never happens. Which rarely happens because we're in synagogue, you know, but that's a beautiful idea to do L'chadodi with the family, etc. Yeah.
It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And you don't need a minyan for Kabbalat Shabbat.
What's defined as Kabbalat Shabbat, Joe?
What is defined as Kabbalat Shabbat?
What do you mean by Kabbalat Shabbat? Because I hear different, I mean, where do you start? Shalom Elechem or you skip that?
No. Kabbalat Shabbat. I'm talking about what you know as, okay? Again, different people know Kabbalat Shabbat as different things, but what I would tell you know as Mizmor David and L'chadodi and Bamim Malikin and Mizmor Shilim Shabbat.
Oh.
Okay? That's Kabbalat Shabbat.
People do that at home?
You would be, in a case like this,
right.
Of Pores Mapel Mikadesh, okay, when you would get to that point of sunset or a couple of minutes before sunset, you would start with that. Imagine your whole family around the table. There's more, beautiful. It's a very, very nice thing. You, your wife, your sons, your daughters, you know. What's wrong?
Rabbi, just to clarify, you don't have to
what
clean
rabbi?
the table.
The rabbi's in the other corner over there. His name is Rabbi Haim Kasola. I'm Joey.
I'm sorry, Rabbi. You don't have to clean the table or anything. It's just a matter of bringing out the kiddush and the halot.
It's not cleaning. It's spreading a cloth over, as basically you're showing a distinction now.
So the Masetan, I guess we would bring a kos shel beracha for the wine, but not say beracha, or don't even do that. Just bring halot to the table.
Well, you have to make kiddush. You have to be mekadesh the day.
So you bring a siddur, I guess. Okay, but the food hasn't changed. You have your wine already.
Your food hasn't changed. You could bring out, another course. There's no problem. You know, a lot of people like to have, okay, we're going to start off with, course 1, course 2, course 3. Now we're at the Shabbat. Let's bring out another item that we didn't bring out yet.
And the bread, no? I mean, you're not going to say hamotzi, but you should have the halot come out now.
Well, I believe in bread, but okay.
But it should, in other words.
No. What you're referring to as halot, okay? So I'm assuming you're referring to those Polish braided loaves that they sell.
No. The 2 pitas that we bring. The 2 pitas.
Oh, okay.
I have to do that after sunset. I mean, as part of the Shabbat side of the meal, or it's all one meal?
As part of the Shabbat side of the meal, okay, you would be making kiddush but without saying Hagefen, as
Right.
if you've said Hagefen prior to that, so you would omit that, Birkat Hagefen part. Right?
Same with but have the wine. And same with hamotzi, have some bread.
You say exactly. You're going to take your 2 loaves, okay? You'll have 2 loaves that you'll have, and you won't say hamotzi on it because we're assuming that you already said hamotzi, okay? And you'll take, and then you'll eat a piece, and you'll distribute like you normally would.
Very compelling.
That would all be covered.
Right.
Right. You would cover it before you, basically once you hit sunset, you have to cover. Okay.
It's probably not going to be around if you start an hour before. It's going to be in the kitchen still. Not going to be on the table.
What do you mean?
Meaning, I guess you could bring in the bread and the.
You're going to have bread on the table regardless. You're eating bread as part of your Seuda, correct?
Right.
So you're going to have bread. All of a sudden, Shabbat, cover everything. It's not. I think I have to make a little mock video.
So that is the Pores Mapa part. Okay, beautiful. I'm sorry to take so much time with the question.
No. Don't be sorry. It's a good thing.
Trying to register.
Everybody has to understand because sometimes people, don't want to ask the question because they're going to be mocked. I'm not mocking. I'm telling you, it's important, that we have to show exactly what it is so everybody understands what it is, and how to do it and how to go about it in the proper steps. And that's why, again, I understand those who are afraid that their constituents are going to be confused and mess up. I understand all that. Anybody else? So we're good.
This is probably too late to bring up, but what you mentioned, I think at 9:15 when you started, actually, is you're coming to the Shabbat meal already full. And are you giving enough attention to the meal of Shabbat at that time? Are you giving enough attention and te'avon for the Shabbat meal if you're already full an hour earlier from Purim, or maybe less?
You're talking about in a situation where you.
Pores Mapa.
Oh, situation Pores Mapa. So if you know you're in a Pores Mapa situation and that you're going to be at the table for approximately 2 hours, let's say, obviously, Hacham Einaf Birosho to pace themselves. And the host and hostess also have to know how to pace, the meal, what they're bringing out, the conversation that's going on. It's Purim, so you're singing also as part of the Seuda. Purim always, has Purim songs going on. You have Hiddushim about the Megillah, let's say. Once you get to the Purim, people are going to ask you, what are we going to be doing now? What's happening? There's generally a lot of conversation. A Purim table is, for some reason, it's generally different than a regular Shabbat or a Yom Tov table. The conversation is much more lively. People are much more animated. Maybe it's because they were drinking a little bit earlier, or maybe it's the simcha of the day itself. But I generally noticed, in the circles I've been in, that the Purim Seuda tends to have a different spirit to it, and you could definitely guide your family and your guests in a direction that you want them to go in as far as how much they're eating and how quickly. So now, as far as you have to eat, so much on Shabbat, you have to eat. You have to go into Shabbat with an appetite. How much of an appetite? I don't think anybody can determine exactly how much that is, but at the very least, you're eating enough bread, because if we said that in medieval Alexandria, they would go and then they'd have the meal beforehand, go pray, and then come back, say Kiddush, and only eat, say Mosseri and eat bread, and then say Birkat Hamazon, they were done. They didn't even eat food afterwards. So obviously they saw that as being sufficient. For our mindset, I don't think it would be sufficient. Okay? So I think we covered all the aspects. We didn't have a chance to read everything because obviously it's a lot of reading. But there's more than enough sources to rely upon to do Poresh Mapel Mekadesh. And in my humble opinion, I mean it truly humble opinion, I think it's really the proper thing to do. And for most families, it's probably the best thing to do. I think it will really, enhance the Purim and enhance the Shabbat. And like Marky said, you're not eating like a glutton to shovel down 2 major meals. And that's a big thing for a lot of people.
Another issue, though, from I guess communal standpoint, that people, they want to see their families on, their children, their grandchildren, and if they do it close to Shabbat, that's not going to happen. So it's one reason why they may opt to do it early. They want to get together with the families, so the families come and they can all drive and have Seudat Purim together.
Mm-hmm. Like when they do Mazza every Friday, right?
Okay, so listen, every family has its own dynamic. I don't think, any one answer would be correct or incorrect as far as what you said, Mark. But
just saying it's a consideration people have.
Right, I understand. So a big part that I've always noticed on Purim Day, children and grandchildren, they go to visit their parents and grandparents, to bring them Mishloach Manot, and they spend time there also. And while you're spending time there, you get served something. It's not just walk in, walk out. You also serve something, eat something, drink something. So over the course of the day, everybody's nibbling at different things also. And you're spending, time visiting, this side of the family, that side of the family, this aunt, this uncle, this different thing. So, and because many of us live in somewhat close proximity, it's not unheard of, to have to, walk home on Shabbat. But again, it depends on the family, it depends on the, on the ages of the people, the distances they live, and, also the weather. If it's hot, cold, rainy, snowing, be a lot of different factors. I hear what you're saying. I don't know if, just the concept of not being able to drive home is enough to stop people from doing this as a Shabbat option. But again, everybody's the situation is different. All right, everybody.
Thank you, Chacham.
We're done with this topic, so I'll try to put together a summary. Okay, send it out to you guys, and if you feel it's worthwhile, send it out to whoever you think might be able to use it in the proper way. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you, Chacham.